would just like to say this first before we get into this video. If I sound different or nasally or anything, it is because I'm getting over a cold and my nose is currently still stuffy, so I apologize if I sound a little bit off right now. Castles for centuries have held a variety of stories, that of war, royal celebration, and betrayal. They are their own person in some cases, hold an overwhelming experience for some travelers and tourists. To think that very halls you may walk through, the residents of the castle were hustling down or girls were seen gossiping in, or even to know that in some of the rooms where war strategies were being thought of and talked about. These very moments in time, as well as history, is what leads castles to be so fascinating to look at and explore. Today we'll be taking a journey throughout the castles in Scotland, the country steeped in history and awe. These castles all share so much history together, from Warres, a residence of Mary, Queen of Scots, and the home of the crown jewels. But it's not just the history that's so fascinating, but the ghosts of the past that continue to haunt the castle grounds of each place. So gather up your candlelights and venture on this historical journey as we take a look at 3 prominent castles in Scotland: Edinburgh Castle, Stirling Castle, and Dunbar Castle. Scotland's castles are silent footsteps, with the wind howling through stone corridors. Though they weren't just built to be big and pretty, but they served as a fortress/protection during war times. They were more so used as a defense and protection mechanism, built as fortified structures to protect nobles, royalty, and local populations from future invasions or attacks. Used also as a symbol of power, they demonstrated to outsiders a role of wealth, status, and of course, dominance over the region. They are of course the homes/residence for the nobility, as the castle provided luxury and secure homes for kings, lords, and their families. Castles during the time that they were being built also took place in many battles. Many castles hold within the walls stories of battles, political intrigue, hauntings, as well as royal life, as they have preserved centuries of history within their walls. Before we get into the hauntings of the castles featured in today's episode, let us go over the brief history of castles. Like I said in the beginning, they aren't just a pretty building to look at. Castles were built between the 12th and 16th century, serving as fortresses, homes to nobles, and power symbols. They served also as strongholds during the clan wars, royal residence, and military garrisons. Many of the buildings endured sieges, betrayals, and bloodshed, leaving in its shadow stories embedded in the stones. Fortified settlements have existed for thousands of years, examples found in ancient civilization in places such as Egypt, China, and India. The Royal Empire's use of stone in defense construction made an influence in later castle designs. Moving into the more medieval times, castles emerged in Europe around the 9th through 10th century, combining the functions of residence and that of a military fortress. Though during the High Medieval period, castle architecture started to become more advanced and specialized, with innovations including curtain walls with towers, gatehouses and drawbridges, moats for added defense, arrow slits, and murder holes. Castles were then beginning to become full military complexes, but also had great halls, chapels, and domestic quarters. They were becoming the political centers where lords controlled land, held court, and collected taxes. Kings were building vast, elaborate castles as a way to display wealth and control. An example of this is Edward I Castle in Wales. Many castles were built near borders or rebellious regions to enforce royal authority. Though the castle's lifespan did eventually dwindle down as new war innovations were being made, such as the rise of gunpowder and cannons made traditional castles less effective for defense, but also though the thick, high stone walls were vulnerable to artillery, and some castles were even being renovated with the Renaissance influences, thus losing their fortress identity. Each castle carries echoes of the past, memories of sorrow and pain, as well as for many unfinished tales. Some may even believe the spirits that roam throughout the castle are residual energies from past traumas, others see others though see them as guardians of the past. The line between history and the hauntings becomes beautifully blurred. In this episode, we'll walk through corridors and big elaborate rooms where the time itself seems to stand still, and the past refuses to be forgotten. The Edinburgh Castle. The castle is also known to be the City on Rock, with layers of haunting history with Scotland's capital fortresses. The castle is built atop a castle rock, a site inhabited for thousands of years. This castle has been a fortress, royal residence, and prison throughout the countless wars like the Jacobite Uprising. One of Scotland's most iconic landmarks, built dramatically atop Castle Rock, an extinct volcanic plug that has been inhabited since the Iron Age. Human settlements on this castle rock have dated back at least 3,000 years ago. It housed Scottish monarchs, one of those figures being Queen Mary of Scots, whose chapel from the 1100s still remains and is the oldest building in Edinburgh. The Edinburgh Castle is known to be one of the most besieged castles in Europe, playing major roles in the wars of the Scottish independence and later conflicts. It is also said that Scotland's crown jewels and the Stone of Destiny are also housed and displayed here. Although the history of it itself is fascinating, that's not all this castle has to offer, as it also is known to be one of the capital's most haunted spots. Haunting stories include the ghostly prisoner, phantom pipers, and shadowy figures in the underground vault. Out of all of the hauntings that go on here, we will be mostly focusing on the ghostly prisoner. The ghostly prisoner of Edinburgh Castle is one of the most persistent and eerie legends. Another ghost story, though, that seems to get mixed in with the stories of the unidentified prisoners is the tale of the Headless Drummer, not to be confused with the Headless Horseman. This ghostly figure is often said to linger in the old dungeons. The ghostly prisoner is typically described by some as an unnamed figure believed to have been held in the castle's underground vaults. This was during the time of the Jacobite Rising or earlier military conflicts. The prisoners would mostly be kept anonymous during the time and in horrible conditions, many dying without actual records. Later on, this would fuel the ghost stories that would be told. The most famous variation of this ghost story is the Headless Drummer. This particular ghost is said to be of a young soldier who was captured and tortured. His spirit supposedly appears before times of danger, seen headless and carrying ghostly drums. The first ever reported sighting was in 1650, just before Oliver Cromwell's army stormed the castle. People that visit or tour this castle over the centuries have described this ghostly figure as a shadowy figure of a man wandering through the battlements of a field. Hearing phantom footsteps echoing in empty rooms, feeling a sudden drop in temperature, the sounds of drumming in the castle walls without a visible source, and the infamous presence of the ghost or spirit that's felt near the dungeon and the old prison vaults beneath the Crown Square. People nowadays also report the sensation of being watched or brushed past in the darkest areas. The lingering question, though, is why does this presence haunt the castle? While it's known that Edinburgh Castle held prisoners of war, accused traitors and Jacobite supporters, as well as thieves and political prisoners, many of the people held within the castle walls, because of one of those reasons, endured horrible conditions that would eventually lead to their deaths. The legend of the ghostly prisoner likely emerged from all the suffering that the prisoners went through that took place in their cramped and airless cells. Today, the legend of the ghostly prisoner that haunts the castle's walls stands to represent, in the spiritual sense, the violence and the turbulent past and the people lived within went through. Sadly, there were countless unnamed people who were held prisoner during the times of war and had died there without possibly even being properly mourned, thus leading to their spirits still thinking they're trapped, as they are not fully able to let go of the past and move on. The lingering imprint of trauma that took place within the walls that soaked in history plays a major role in the hauntings of the castle. Although he hasn't been directly seen since the invasion of Oliver Cromwell's army, people have still reported hearing the faint sound of drumming or the feeling of being watched in the old dungeon. Though the residents aren't fond of wanting to see this ghostly figure, as legend states, if his headless apparition is seen once more, ill luck will befall on the castle. The sound of his drums are believed to warn residents of impending attacks on the castle. So beware of the sounds and feeling of this ghostly prisoner, as it may be more creepy than you think. Stirling Castle, the Watcher in Green. This next castle is in fact the residence of Mary, Queen of Scots, the royal stronghold and home to prophetic hauntings. One of Scotland's most important castles, as it was the residence of the king and queen. The scene of coronation, sieges, and political intrigue, Stirling Castle is also known to be called Key to the Kingdom. This castle sits between the Highlands and Lowlands, as it was also the site of countless battles, sieges, royal dramas, and of course, the political turning points. Like I said before, Stirling Castle was the home to the Stuart kings and queens, including the famous Mary, Queen of Scots, who was known to have spent her childhood at this castle and was also crowned here as an infant. Though castles were also meant to serve as places of war strategies and military fortresses, this castle is no different, especially since the Scottish and English both fiercely fought over this castle. The capture and recapture were crucial in battles like the Stirling Bridge, Bannockburn. The castle in later years, though, would go through a Renaissance splendor, as both James IV and V would go on to turn it into a glittering Renaissance palace. While this castle isn't widely publicized as the Edinburgh Castle is, Stirling Castle is still famous amongst the paranormal enthusiasts for two of its major spirits. The first being the Green Lady, one of Scotland's most well-known Green Lady spirits who appears at Stirling Castle. To some, the spirit is described as a woman in a flowing green gown. She's seen also drifting through the Queen's chambers, corridors, as well as stairways, though she can also be seen appearing distressed or as if she's searching for someone. The legend of the Green Lady itself goes, she's believed to have been a lady-in-waiting or servant to Mary, Queen of Scots. Some say she saved the queen from a fire that broke out, dying in the process. Others say she was a secret lover or a spirit tied to the queen's fate. People still report sudden temperature drops, footsteps, and glimpses of a green figure disappearing around the corners. Another famous figure is a mysterious man dressed in full Highland attire, kilt, sporran, and bonnet. People have described this ghostly figure as seeing him wandering through the battlements of the halls. Some even say that he appears as a guide to tourists, vanishing when spoken to or when they look back. Many of the people now who visit the Stirling Castle believe he's a reenactor until he disappears and isn't seen again. The same as the ghostly prisoner. The Highland Ghost is another spirit with overlapping legends rather than just one single official story. They're the most commonly told reasons for why he still haunts the castle to this day. He's a fallen soldier from the Jacobite Rising, a guardian of the castle, a spirit tied to the castle's violent history, or mistaken identity, a modern soldier's ghost. One of these theories, my opinion, is he's either a fallen soldier or a guardian of the castle. These two hold the most accurate and probable reasons as to why he haunts the castle. One of the strongest theories connected to him is the Jacobite Rising Wars, especially the 1745 Rising, when Highlanders were fighting to restore the Stuart monarchy. If he was a fallen soldier, then why would he haunt the castle still to this day? It's known that many of the Highland soldiers died near or around the Stirling battlefield areas, or some were taken prisoner or died from wounds in or near the castle's military quarters. His spirit may be still wandering because of the violence, or maybe searching for his regiment, and or trying to complete a duty he never was able to finish. People have known to say that his purposeful walk and guide-like demeanor suggests that he may also be a soldier still trying to perform his roles. The other theory is more symbolic. He's a protective figure rather than a violent or tormented one. This version of him suggests he's a proud Highland warrior loyal to the Scottish crown and still on duty centuries after his death, choosing to watch over the battlefields and hallways. He is described in this version as being a calm, steady presence with no sense of fear, thus contributing to the belief that he's more guardian than a ghost. The castle as a whole has been a witness to centuries of war, imprisonment, royal births, and violent power struggles, as it's a place ripe with layered energy and folklore. But with the Stirling's ghost lingering out of loyalty, the spirits of Dunnottar whisper of violence and defiance. The Dunnottar Castle, the ruining above the sea. This castle is one of Scotland's most dramatic and breathtaking ruins. Dunnottar is isolated with tragedy and a ghostly guardianship. It sits perched atop sheer cliffs overlooking the North Sea, filled with wildness, and is hauntingly beautiful. The castle's isolated location made it nearly impossible for others to invade the surrounding areas. This made it ideal for hiding treasures, as it protected Scotland's crown jewels from Oliver Cromwell's invading force. The women who were loyal to the crown smuggled them out in sacks of flax and carried them down the cliffside to safety. The history that this castle brings goes back over 1,000 years. The dark parts of its history are some of the most chilling in Scotland, withstanding sieges like the assaults of Viking raids and English armies during the War for Independence. Though its history took a sad and tragic turn in 1685, the castle took to imprisoning around 160 Covenanters. These were both men and women who were locked away in a dungeon-like cellar that was known to be the Whig Vault, just because they refused to renounce their faith. Because of this, so many men and women died from suffocation, starvation, and desperate escape attempts. These events would go on to heavily shape the castle's haunted reputation. The two of the most prominent ghosts/spirits of this castle are the Viking ghost and the Covenanter spirits. The Viking ghost isn't directly associated with the castle, but rather with the outside history of it. Because the Dunnottar Castle was attacked by Norse invaders in the 9th century, some have gone on to believe that the Viking warrior haunts the castle grounds. This ghost is rooted in the castle's earliest and bloodiest fight. Norse invaders attacked the early Christian settlement that stood atop the cliffs. The monks and villagers that lived within the settlement had attempted to defend the settlement, but unfortunately they were quickly overwhelmed. Many were then killed and the structures were burned down to the ground. Although the identity of the ghost hasn't been identified, yet many do believe that the ghost is a Viking who was killed in the fight and the body left without any proper burial. Many, though, have reported seeing a tall figure with long hair and armor, as well as hearing echoes of battle cries, especially during the storms. You may also feel as though you're being watched while walking the pathways toward the sea, as if the Viking is still on guard. His presence is thought to be accompanied by the sound of wind that can either suddenly grow unnaturally still or unnervingly loud. The Viking ghost is one of the souls who haunts the place for 3 reasons, most likely. He has some sort of unfinished battles as he returns to the place where he's been said to have died, possibly seeking victory that never was achieved, as a restless spirit that's tied to conflict and are seemingly very common in Scottish ghost lore. It's known in the Norse/Celtic tradition that if a soul hasn't been properly buried or honored, especially that of a warrior, their spirits are known to wander. Though some have claimed that the Viking ghost isn't inherently a single spirit, but rather an echo of the violence or the raid. This is known as a residual haunting that replays the trauma of the attack on a loop. In a place where cliffs drop into the roaring waves and the wind screams through the ruins of the halls, it's easy to believe a long-dead warrior still lingers in the mist. From a warrior fighting for its victory to a group of men and women who were imprisoned for refusing to swear loyalty to King James VII. These spirits are one of the most tragic, emotionally heavy hauntings in Scotland. It all started in 1685, when it was reported that around 167 male and female Covenanters were imprisoned. They were locked away in a cramped cellar in the castle. The space was dark, airless, overcrowded, cold, and had minimal food and water. Those who were able to survive it didn't meet the happy ending they thought was to come, but rather were deported as slaves. Due to the intense suffering that went on in such an intense space, the castle has become forever marked by their presence. The folklore surrounding this haunted story has described these spirits as being echoes of the dying, as some of the spirits are thought to be the residual hauntings, a replaying of the agonizing suffering that they experienced. The feeling of crushing sadness suffocating the walls nobody wanted to or thought thought to save them from their torment. Because of this, some of the other spirits are described as intelligent spirits that are aware of their suffering, who still remain tied to the site. Soft cries or whispers begging for release are heard throughout the vault. Angry spirits may be wanting their presence to be known. Some have said that these spirits linger throughout the castle as a reminder to the public of the cruelty that had once been endured, and thus refusing to be forgotten. Why these spirits may still haunt the Donato Castle can be explained by three major reasons. Trauma that is imprinted in the stone. Extreme suffering is known to leave behind emotional stains within the place, replaying the past like echoes that you cannot forget. Many of these people suffered under immense pain and weren't able to escape, and the people who did were still met with pain once more. Spirits who were denied peace. Many of the Covenanters were buried without a proper ceremony or were lost to sea while being deported off somewhere else. In folklore, these spirits are believed to be another form of a restless ghost. A warning to the living. Some may even say these spirits remain tied here so the tragedy can never truly be erased. These hauntings feel much heavier than most castle ghosts, maybe not truly malicious, but rather unbearably sorrowful. 3 castles, 3 legacies, each whispering through their very halls that history never truly dies. Collectively, these castles reflect Scotland's turbulent past of wars, invasions, royalty, betrayal, and perseverance. The Edinburgh Castle with the headless drummer being a ghostly figure whose drumbeats can be heard echoing moments before danger or unrest. The ghostly prisoner is a shadowy presence from the old dungeons. Its presence is felt through cold drafts, hearing the footsteps, or by feeling his watchful gaze. This castle's energy is layered with siege, torture, royal intrigue, and above all, the centuries of conflict leaving in its wake the restless echoes of its violent past. The royal home of Mary, Queen of Scots, is steeped with history as the Green Lady herself haunts the castle. A spirit long since tied to Mary, that's seen drifting through the royal chambers wearing a green gown, a spirit that continues to stay loyal to the crown even in death. But also with centuries of war and violence, as the Highland prisoner lingers throughout the castle, a soldier who appears as a living man before vanishing when spoken to, who's thought to be one of the Jacobite soldiers, but may also be a guardian or even just a remnant of Stirling's long military history. Some things may still be better kept in the dark. The Stirling Castle is a royal seat marked by numerous battles, coronations, tragedy, and loyalty. The ghosts that remain roaming about the corridors are still known to reflect a divide between loyalty and warfare, but also its deep ancient history. Another castle that matches its surroundings and atmosphere perfectly is none other than the Donato Castle, a castle built atop the cliffs and is isolated in its own world. Carries both tragedy and ruin. The Viking ghost is known in legend to be a towering Norse warrior who haunts the rocky cliffs, being tied to the brutal 9th century Viking raid on its original settlement, as well as the tragic story of the Covenanter spirits who may be one spirit or a body/energy of the emotions trapped within the Wick's vault. These spirits are one of the most intense hauntings, with echoes of prisoners who suffered and died in the Wick's vault. The emotions being felt through whispers, weeping cold spots, and a crushing sense of sorrow. A lonely wind-lashed ruin that's steeped in siege, tragedy, and martyrdom. The hauntings of its past shaped by isolation, suffering, and ancient violence. These ghosts are more than stories. They're echoes of real history that continue to linger where the past's emotions run deep within the castle. From the royal chambers of Mary, Queen of Scots, to the cliffside ruins of Donato Castle, each of these hauntings reveals the different chapters of Scotland's history and identity, with its bravery, sorrow, mystery, and the enduring pull of the supernatural. Thanks for joining me for another walk through Scotland's haunted history. Don't forget to follow this podcast on Instagram for more behind-the-curtain updates and info. If you enjoy the supernatural or learning about the darker aspects of history, then be sure to hit the subscribe and the like button so you won't miss out on any more historic tales. It truly helps out the show. If you have any eerie tales to tell from Scotland, comment them down below as I'm always eager to learn more. Like I said in the beginning, I apologize for my voice if it sounds bit off or nasally or what. Like I said, I'm trying to get over a cold, and I really can't put off filming or recording this podcast any longer than I have been. So until we meet again, stay curious, stay safe, and keep an ear out. You never know what echoes through the night.